you, Matt. All right, so my name's Kirk Gilbert. I'm with Choate Construction here in Savannah. This is really exciting that you guys are putting this on, so thank you, Matt, and Georgia Forestry Foundation. When we got involved in Street in 2020, the project was going under a little bit of reprogramming, so that gave us an opportunity to take a crash course on mass timber. This would have been our first mass timber project. So it was groups like Woodworks that helped us speed along that education. So I think it's great that we're continuing to seek adoption. We had a great experience on Street, specifically with mass timber. I'm going to be joined by Jacob Moon, pre-construction manager with Choate, Tyler Stritt, project manager, and Bryan Harde with LS3P Architecture. We're going to talk about some of the unique aspects of mass timber, and they may present as challenges, but they're really not if you're well prepared. And I feel like we got a lot of help getting prepared and had a fantastic experience, and our experience on Street left us wanting to do more mass timber. As I agree with Pat, the pros are much better than the cons. So, like I said, Street started we broke ground, May 2021. One advantage I'd like to confirm for you, based on our experiences, was efficiency. Our industry has not really got a great habits of being efficient. Broadly, we tolerate way too much waste. Manpower, materials, effort, all of these things convert to dollars. But mass timber really leads us to the type of processes and habits that improve efficiency, and not just the actual timber, but other parts of the building, like the MEP systems and the fenestration systems. A lot of the things we did on Street were prefabricated, brought to the job site ready to install. That cuts down on on-site cutting, unpacking, repacking. There was a massive manpower difference in what would be a similar product type. That converts to safer jobs. Street, no lost time accidents, which is huge compared to the job size. That's not a given. We finished Street on time, despite having a pretty significant shipping delay that had to do with geopolitical stuff in 2020. You guys probably remember that. But absorbing that delay, the job was still delivered on time. And it was also minimal punch list compared to other job sizes, which means our owners were able to use that building immediately after it was CO'd. These are real outcomes that I attribute to mass timber, and Tyler's going to talk about it later. Some of the subs that participated on the upfront collaboration and the leveraging technology before we started work, these aren't subcontractors and partners that are always naturally inclined to do that. So I think I can tell you from my perspective, mass timber made us a better builder, and I think it's improving our industry, not just on mass timber jobs, but encouraging better habits, and hopefully we can kind of break our addiction with waste. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Bryan Harde. Thank you, Kirk.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. Good to see some familiar faces. Happy to share some insight on the planning and development of this project, which started with us back in 2018. And you hear me say 3 times at the time. Think about the timeline. This was pre-pandemic and also pre-acknowledgement of some of the technologies we've used in the building community. Thank you. The decision to pursue mass timber on this project was driven by the client. They had previously completed a nail laminated timber project in Brooklyn. It was a mixed-use retail office building. That project type was probably a little more ideal than multifamily, but we were fortunate to have this opportunity brought to us, basically. And they saw mass timber as a differentiator in the local multifamily market. They also saw it as a value driver to offset some of the transitional, some of the aspects of where the product is located. These projects are on the fringe of the historic district, just west of Martin Luther King, and part of the goals of the development was to extend sort of the walkable downtown city and push the edge with a courtyard that leads through 110 Ann Street into 111. I'd like to acknowledge the design team for basic services. We had the Coleman Company, civil engineers, we had Tharp Engineering Group, structure, Harry Weeks engineers, and all the building services, and Wooden Partners. They were landscape architects. So mass timber was new to LS3P. So we also had a consulting engineer on board with us to help understand the material, understand cross-segmented timber, how it behaved, and to assist the design team in a successful project. So the responsibilities and workflow were a little unique in that we had our consultant, and some folks fact check this, our consultants look at the gravity loads, column reactions, glulam sizing, CLT sizing, and we had our local engineers look at global analysis and calculations and the lateral design. And we also had some support from Holzpack, which was Holzpack's a partner with the fabricator and the supplier that provided additional engineering consulting on this project. So a lot of this had been talked about previously, but the timeline was a bit unique. We were on the forefront of this construction type here in the Southeast. Like I said, we started the project in 2018. At the time, Georgia acknowledged we were under the 2012 IBC, so we knew that the 2020 IBC was being adopted soon. So what we had to do was submit an alternative materials and methods request to get approval for cross-laminated timber for use in this project. It was a lot of back and forth with, at the time, the permitting department and the local authorities and fire marshal to sort of raise this comfort of this and awareness of this project type, construction type. It's similar to concrete, masonry, and steel, and they just have their unique design standards that are specific to acceptance here. So we worked through that and got approvals. One thing we noted on type 4, we asked for some concealed spaces as part of our alternate methods request, primarily under bathrooms. The bathrooms are stacked and we didn't want to see the plumbing, so we have some extra fire protection above ceilings and bathrooms. Some stats on the project. This is a view of the Revit models. The 110 Ann Street is in the forefront, 157 units, 239 beds. There's a promenade and courtyard as part of the amenities for 110 Ann Street. We're in the final stages of review for LEED Gold certification. 111 Ann Street's in the background, 232 units, 251 beds. 2 floors of subterranean parking, 157 vehicle spaces. And there's just a beautiful courtyard amenity on Main Street. Another view of the Revit model. These are the timber portions of the Revit model. Post and beam related construction with cross-linkage floor and roof plates, cross-linkage timber walls for shear and cores, and we really wanted to capitalize as much as we could on the exposure and expression of the timber. Not all of the timber is exposed, so we started to get a little bit creative on what parts of the timber would be visual grade versus not visual grade for cost savings. Underside of the floor slabs that are exposed are obviously visual grade. Not all sides of all columns are exposed, but for just ease of construction, we just made them all visual grade as well. A couple lessons learned. I think Mr. Shea mentioned this. So mass timber is not a commodity product. So not every supplier has the same panel thickness or cooling member sizes. So that's always a challenge, figuring out what your parameters are and understanding who you're working with early on is a huge advantage to the project in general. And I think Laura mentioned this, although finished panels can be up to 60 feet long and up to 10 feet wide. There are some limitations for shipping, fabrication. So we have to keep all that in mind when we design these systems. There's another lesson learned was volume of the material. And sometimes it's more beneficial, even though you can design a panel or a beam to have an effective structural layer or to be fully exposed. Sometimes, you have to pick and choose your battles and not necessarily have, pick those areas of the building where exposed timber is not a priority and just cover those with gypsum board to achieve the same fire rating and save some money there. And the last thing on lessons learned, the diagram or the picture in the middle is of a pedestal. This is where the podium meets the timber. That interface is really important. We found that concrete is only as flat as humanly possible, right? And this timber is, there's very little tolerance. It goes together almost like furniture. So what we did was we designed and implemented a pedestal at each column that's adjustable to deal with maybe the irregularities and the flatness. And starting the project right, going vertical, that first floor is really important in getting a strong date on it in flatness. And we just, that was key in, I think, setting up the project for success in construction.
That same picture, what's the interface between the steel plate and the wood column? Is there a spline, steel splines up into that column, or is it, how's the steel connected to it?
Yeah, so there's of course, concrete podium with an embed plate, and you had a section of your connector that's welded to the embed. This is the part that's adjustable, and this flat plate is fastened on the underside of the column. So when they set these, they welded everything in place, and they just adjusted those four corners to get that thing as flat as possible, starting on the second floor of your timber construction. Next, I'll pass it on to Jacob.
There we go. Hey, I'm Jacob. I worked on the pre-construction on the Street project. So this was a complex project with or without mass timber. It was underground parking, shoring, underpinning, 400,000 square feet of multifamily. It was a big project. But then we introduced the mass timber component, which is something none of us had ever worked with. We've done heavy timber, we were familiar, but we hadn't gone through the process yet. So first things first was to truly understand the product. Gotta say, I'm sure it would have been nice to attend one of these things 5 years ago. So it was genuinely brand new to us. So a few ways that we went about doing that. We were introduced to another GC in Arkansas, Naples, I think was their name. And we set up a couple of conference calls with them. That's the great thing about our industry, I think, is that we like to lean on each other a lot of times. Most people are helpful. It's a competitive environment, but we're in it for the greater good. But these folks came to us a couple of different times and was able to walk us through the process of, because they had a similar situation. We didn't have the benefit of having domestic products, which I think now is more available, which is great. But they helped us walk through the process of getting through customs, getting the transport of those materials to the site, the staging, where the hardware goes, how it's erected. It was truly so beneficial to have those conversations on the front end. We also talked a lot with the vendor, which was Vendor Holst that was providing the CLT and Blue Lamp products. They were able to help us with understanding how they'll be freighted to the site. We ended up being the importer of record, which I don't think we planned on doing on the front end. So we had to understand the customs a lot more, which we had never done before, and understanding what the cost implications and schedule requirements were for that. So it was a lot of conversations with them, working with Cody and his team, and what they had learned was truly beneficial as well. And then the other thing we did was try to figure out what projects had been completed across the country and figure out who was building them. So we talked to a lot of different subcontractors, people that had been erecting CLT projects, understanding I remember the first conversation we had with one of them, and kind of what Laura said before, 8 people on site. I remember they said that when we were on a conversation. We hung up the phone and I looked over at the guy and I was like, no chance. But it was reality. It's very, very interesting how that conversation can come up when you're so used to a concrete or steel product where you've got tons of people on site. So after educating ourselves, this being a multifamily project, it comes with a certain set of subcontractors that you use in multifamily projects, which maybe aren't the most sophisticated sometimes. So in a project like this, where it's so critical to get the modeling right and to get the preparation correct, we knew that we had to show the subs exactly how it worked and what their part was going to be in it. So they needed to know that they were going to be a part of weekly design meetings, weekly modeling meetings where we needed their input on where penetration should be and what their layouts were going to be so that we can get it all correct so we're not pouring through timber later in the project. They also needed to understand what the aesthetic of the job was, which we did too. So there's a lot of exposed elements. Kind of what Pat was saying, of course it's a more expensive product, but it's less drywall, less painting, it's faster. The subs needed to understand that too. Also, like on the MEP side, typical multifamily wood frame, you're just running flex duct and loose wiring through trusses. It's very simple construction. In this case, it's a lot more sophisticated. It's more of a commercial project. So wirings and conduit. There's a lot of spiral duct. It's just a different product. So it required a lot of education on our side. And then, lastly, I think where we found success on the pre-con side was working as a team. Kirk and I and some of our other guys in the group, and then the design team, Bryan, Cody, we spent a lot of time on the front end trying to understand the product and what it was going to take to get this thing started. So with that, go to the construction.
Hey everyone, my name is Tyler. I was a project manager on the Main Street project that we'll tour here shortly. One of the first questions I had when I was going to be involved in the project was, how do you get it here? So I think that resonates with just about everybody in here, given the supply chain constraints that we've experienced in the past few years. With this being a new product type for us, we had to learn a little bit about how exactly we model it and get it to the site. So this wasn't the same beast as a typical multifamily or mixed-use development where you're ordering a truss package and ordering dimensional lumber. We actually had to develop two models before we could order any material. We had to develop a timber model, which was based on structural design, and we had to develop an MEP model, which was based on the MEP plans for the job. So, as Jacob mentioned, making sure we had the right partners on the subcontracting side was very important. We also had the partnership with Holtzback on the timber model. So, in conjunction for about 5 to 6 weeks, we were modeling the timber elements relative to the MEP systems. So there was a period in there where it felt like every few days, or at least once a week, we were calling Cody or Bryan and saying, "Hey, can we cut a hole here? We need to run a plumbing pipe or an HVAC duct or whatever it may be." And sometimes the solution was yes, sometimes the solution was moving. So every single penetration in this project came pre-punched. So that is atypical of most building types. Most building types, when you're during construction, you're cutting all of the penetrations that you need. So it was, from a speed of installation standpoint, that's definitely one area where we gleaned efficiencies throughout the job, is having all of our openings planned for and pre-punched. After that 6-week process, we completed our clash detections for the model, and we locked in the model. We sent it back to Austria, where the timber was getting fabricated, and we printed out field use drawings for the install. Procurement. So locking in that model began the 10-week procurement process. There was about 8 weeks of fab in there and 2 weeks of shipping. As Bryan mentioned earlier, there were different approaches to the design of each building from a structural standpoint related to the time of the shipping crisis that was ongoing. So there was a lot of volatility with the containers as well as break bulk shipping. So the 111 project is actually more post and beam construction with the flat laminated CLT panels for your floor deck. And on the 110 building, which was built second, the shipping climate had changed a little bit, and there was actually more shear walls on that job, which were completed with CLT panels. So same concept, but a little bit different implementation in each project. So that was an interesting element of the build. And as we're sourcing the timber, there's a handful of other components that have to be sourced along with the timber to complete the installation. So we're talking almost 1 million screws in each building. We're talking about hardware, which comes from a separate supplier in this instance, and these are all of the steel plates that you saw earlier for both the support plates as well as timber-to-timber connections. And a handful of other miscellaneous items, such as taping, waterproofing components. So, in 2021, 2022, we were ordering material for the installation of this job from about 4 or 5 different countries that we all needed on site at the same time to begin installation. So procurement was a full-time job for our operations team while we were both developing the model as well as beginning actual install of the structure, as this Main Street project was a 5/1 timber over footing. Logistics, as you guys will see here shortly, we had a very tight site back behind MLK. The city was fortunately for us, worked with us in allowing us to close the Ann Street Road between the two buildings, and I don't know that this project would have been possible in the time frame that we built it in had that not been the case. So we're grateful for that. Mentioning the waste also earlier, with those tight site constraints, conventional building is going to generate a lot more waste, which meant a lot more dumpster pulls, so a lot more traffic in the area, and these were things that were avoided by use of mass timber. So as the timber first arrives, we're planning the actual shakeout of the material. We shook it out on the 110 laydown side, which was the building that was built second, for installation of the 111 building. And we utilized 2 tower cranes as well as an assist Choate crane to stage material as well as erect material. Material shows up, as you can see on the 110 slab up there, wrapped in bags that are semi-waterproof. So we cut those bags open so the material could breathe once it got to the site to minimize any moisture damage that occurred prior to it being installed. The material was hoisted using lifting straps up to the actual podium, and then the individual elements themselves had fixed pick points that came from the factory, where we actually hooked the crane eye to the lifting point and hoisted it in place. So a few different methods to actually hoist the material into place, but I'll say from first-hand experience, it is much less chaotic than the installation of other building types specifically. So the schedule's been a key benefit that has been talked about a few times throughout this presentation, but our actual experience on the Ann Street project was 5 stories in 12 weeks for each building. So these were 30 to 40,000 square foot floor plates. To give you a little bit of perspective, not doesn't maybe sound quite as impressive as the tower. However, this is a mid-rise multifamily building with very large floor plates. So we're proud to say we hit those scheduled milestones and with each building. And there were numerous challenges that we experienced, as with all projects, a few that were unique to us that maybe we wouldn't have known until we had this experience of building a timber job. We were installing these buildings in the summer of 2022. Summers in Savannah are extremely wet. We would get, on average, it felt like an inch of rain a day, and it was in a short period, so thankfully production wasn't impacted too much. However, we did have to deal with the results of a large volume of water hitting the timber that is a finished product. So we actually reached out to Laura, and she helped us find a taping solution of waterproofing products that were compatible with our timber material. And throughout installation, we taped seams of panel edges, we taped the actual edges of panel at the perimeter of the building to try to prevent water from seeping into the panels themselves. And then at individual increments, I think we did every 2 floors at the 110 building, we actually applied a waterproof coating to the entire floor. So as we mentioned earlier, the topping system is a sound mat and then a concrete topping. So you would never see the sacrificial waterproofing. It was purely to protect the beauty of the timber, so that there was as minimal mitigation as we needed towards the end of the job. So one of the things we had to do, before turning over the building, there was a fair amount of sanding that needed to occur. Again, when you're installing a finished product, we protected as much as we could. However, this was something that Pre-Con had learned. We carried a budget to pretty up the timber to the job, and it worked as you guys will see here shortly. Another challenge we had was fastener and hardware allocation. There were very few fasteners that were approved for use in the United States at the time of these projects. I think the fasteners that we actually used during the project or very close to the end actually received approval. However, we had a pretty lengthy process of going through substitution requests with our design partner to make sure that we could source the correct screws for the job. And then keeping track of 1 million screws in each building. It is a job for someone on site to allocate which screws go in which area of the building, which hardware plates go in each area of the building. And there was one person who had access to that room for each job with a key, because you didn't want that stuff going missing. Because again, in this case, in 21 and 22, you might be ordering it via air freight from Italy. So, in spite of those challenges, we had a great project, again, finished on time, beautiful job. We're excited to walk with you guys, and we'd be excited to build another timber project as soon as we can. Thank you all.